Over the years, berms like these have slowly pinned ISIS down into smaller and smaller territory. Their last sliver of desert there on the Syrian-Iraqi border, where possibly their leader Abu Bakr al-Baghdadi could be hiding out. But in this last stage of the fight, the problems and indeed the enemies the Syrian Kurds here and their American allies face continue to mount.
Last night, another new enemy emerged near here. Tanks and 500 militants loyal to the Syrian regime advanced on and shelled American commandos and their Syrian Kurdish allies not far west of here. And as these US drone pictures help show, US warplanes and gunships killed 100 of them. This artillery crew were also hit. Many others then fled. What on earth just happened the night before, and why haunts the US Special Operations Commander?
Yeah, I guess I am a little bit surprised. Whoever that was knew that the SDF were in defensible positions and knows that they're a fierce opponent.
Does your head begin to spin occasionally when you just look around going, where do the enemies stop and where does the good news begin?
It can be complex out here if you try to take into all those factors. The good thing about being in the military is that we usually have a military mission, and our military mission out here is to defeat ISIS.
The U.S. military is calling this an unprovoked attack that lasted for over 3 hours last night, which began around midnight when 500 fighters affiliated with Russia and Syria's Assad regime began an attack on a U.S. outpost in eastern Syria, 5 miles over the Euphrates River, the demarcation line separating U.S.-backed fighters and Russian-backed fighters of the Assad regime. The Russian-backed fighters attacked with tanks, artillery, and mortars. When the rounds landed too close for comfort, U.S. Special Operations Forces on the ground called in the massive counterattack from the sky. The U.S. airstrikes included AC-130 gunships, F-15s, F-22s, Apache helicopter gunships, and Marine artillery on the ground. All available U.S. jets in the area responded and killed 100 enemy fighters, I am told. No U.S. troops were hurt. One allied Syrian fighter was hurt. U.S. officials say that they had seen the buildup of these Russian-backed forces near the base for a week. The American military called their Russian counterparts on a special hotline and were told not to worry by their Russian counterparts.
The United States provides military support to the Syrian Democratic Forces fighting terrorist groups in Syria. The Syrian government, backed by Russia, is waging a war against those forces in an effort to regain the territory the opposition forces still control. The United States says it is not involved in that fight.
We will use force if our troops are threatened, and that was clearly the case.
The U.S. Department of Defense said Thursday that the U.S.-led coalition and local forces fighting terrorists were attacked by Syrian pro-government forces with artillery, tanks, and rocket launch systems. A Pentagon spokesperson said the coalition's air and artillery strikes were in response to that aggression. Russia has reacted angrily to the airstrikes in which dozens were reported killed.
Today, U.S. Air Force Lieutenant General Jeffrey Harigian joins us from the Combined Air Operations Center at Al Udeid Air Base, Qatar.
For a quick recap, on the evening of February 7th, the coalition acted in self-defense, where coalition advisors were present to support SDF from a hostile force launching an unprovoked, coordinated attack across the Euphrates River against an established SDF position. The hostile force initiated the attack by firing artillery and tank rounds at the SDF position, followed by a battalion-sized dismounted formation attempting to advance on partner forces under cover of supporting fires from artillery, tanks, and multiple launch rocket systems and mortars. At the start of this attack, coalition aircraft, including F-22s and MQ-9s, were overhead providing protective overwatch, defensive counter-air, and ISR support, as we have done daily throughout the fight to defeat ISIS. We immediately contacted the Russian officials on the deconfliction telephone line to alert them to the unprovoked attack on a known SDF and coalition position. After these calls, coalition officials approved strikes to destroy hostile forces. On the ground, Air Force Joint Terminal Attack Controllers embedded with the SDF called in precision strikes for more than 3 hours from aircraft and ground artillery, directing F-15Es, MQ-9s, B-52s, AC-130s, and AH-64 Apaches to release multiple precision fire munitions and conduct strafing runs against the advancing aggressor force, stopping their advance and destroying multiple artillery pieces and tanks. As the hostile forces turned west and retreated, we ceased fire. Despite the attack being unprovoked, it was not entirely unexpected. The coalition observed a slow buildup of personnel and equipment the previous week, and we reminded Russian officials of the SDF and coalition presence via the telephone deconfliction line. This was well in advance of the enemy's forces' attack.
When there were conversations taking place between the coalition and Russia ahead of the strike, did you get the sense that any of the people on the ground were controlled by Russia or were indeed Russian mercenaries? And how would you characterize the conversations that took place over that time? Did you get any pushback from Russia? Did they say, go ahead, it's fine to strike? Could you just give us a little bit of insight into that, please?
Sure, thanks for that question. So what I would tell you is, as I indicated, the deconfliction line has remained open, and it remained open throughout the entire week prior to that strike. And the discussions on the line remain professional, and we have remained in a position where we continue to talk with them on a daily basis. As I mentioned, I don't want to speculate on who was down there. That remains something that we'll continue to take a look at and work our way through. But I think it's important to acknowledge that prior, during, and after, the deconfliction line was open, was used, and as I highlighted, remained a professional way to work deconfliction in that particular area that the operation occurred.
You didn't address the part of my question where I was asking you to just characterize a little bit those conversations. Did the Russians give you any resistance to you conducting these strikes?
As I said, the conversations remained professional. The ability to talk about how we were going to deconflict and what that entailed did not get into specifics that would lead me to anything but professional conversations occurring throughout the entire time that built up to this situation occurring.
Брат, смотри, ну там 177 убиты, это только 5-я рота. Двойку практически не зацепило. Короче, 5-ку всю уничтожили. Их раскатали, блядь, авиацией, вертушками, артиллерией. Ну там, блядь, и курды на них с американцами подперли. У пацанов просто не было шансов. 5-ка легла почти вся. Вот остатки тяжелых, блядь, сейчас тюльпан придет, блядь, ночью сегодня, блядь, будем тогда встречать уже. Давай, на связи. Викторович, по-моему, и все наши тоже минусовые.
Только из техники уцелел один танк и один БРДМ, говорит.
А все остальные бардаки, все остальные танки были уничтожены, говорит, первые минуты боя сразу.
Короче, парняга сейчас отзвонился. Они в колонну выстроились. И один, ну, не доехали до этих метров 300, блядь, 700, говорит, до позиции, на. Там один взвод вперед пошел, а эти колонна стояла. И они, короче, метров 300 не доехали. Те, нахуй, американский флаг подняли, нахуй, и по ним прям арта начала жестко хуячить. А потом вертушки, говорит, подлетели, нахуй, начали ебашить всех, кого там этот, нахуй, вот и бегали. Вот сейчас парняга отзвонил, короче, в общей сложности 215-200, нахуй. В общей сложности 215-200, вроде так вот, нахуй. Там, короче, раскатали, нахуй, ебать, просто жестко, блядь, обозначили себя, нахуй. Наши вообще на что надеялись, там, ебать, сейчас, типа, сами съебутся, что ли, блядь, что там, напугаются, нахуй, хуй знает. Короче, такая хуйня, говорит, кого, говорит, вообще, нахуй, познать не могут, там, народу дофига. Ну, в общем, вот так вот. Они стоящую колонну, короче, прохуячили просто артой даже, а никто там больше нет, ну, пехота не выдвигался, они чисто артой нахуячили там этим, и все, и пиздец.
Илья, привет. Вот то, что новости показывают, да, там по телевизору, что там, ну, в Сирии там 25 человек там раненых, там, сирийской, там, блядь, армии, там, ну и так далее. Короче, это нахуй разъебали наших. Вот, короче, в одной роте нахуй 200 человек, нахуй 200-х. Сразу же. В другой 10 человек. И вот про третью не знаю, но там тоже растрепали очень сильно вообще. Вот, короче, 3 роты пострадало. Вот, били пиндосы. Сначала артой накрыли, нахуй, опять, вот, а потом подняли, нахуй, 4 вертушки. И в карусель запустили, короче, из крупнокалиберных пулеметов, нахуй, короче, всех хуячили. У наших, кроме автоматов, нахуй, не было вообще ничего. Вот, ну уж не говоря там о каком-то ПЗРК и так далее. Короче, растрепали там вообще, ну, устроили ад. И пиндосы конкретно и четко знали, нахуй, что это мы идем русские. Вот. Наши шли завод отжимать, а они на этом заводе, короче, сидели. Короче, мы пизды получили вообще жестких, нахуй. Вот сейчас мне пацаны отзвонились, нахуй, там сидят, бухают. Короче, блядь, много очень, нахуй, пропавших без вести. Ну, это, короче, пиздец вообще там. Блядь, еще одно унижение, блядь, и, ну, короче, с нами, нахуй, ну, никто вообще, нахуй, не считается. Как с чертями поступили вообще. Думаю, что наши заднюю сейчас врубят, нахуй, наше правительство, и никто ничего, никакую ответку, никто ничего не сделает, и никто никого не уничтожит за это, нахуй. Вот такие вот у нас потери.